A candle never loses its light while lighting another candle. I thought this was just inspirational nonsense, the kind of thing people put on Pinterest. Then I spent 5 years protecting my creative flame like it was the last match on Earth. And you know what happened? I almost went dark completely. Turns out I had the whole thing backwards. Picture this. You finally made it. You got the clients, the portfolio, the style people recognize. But late at night, staring at a blank screen, you feel empty. The well is dry. So what do most creatives do? They build higher walls, stricter NDAs, private tutorials, guard every technique, every shortcut, every hard-won lesson. Because if everyone knows what you know, what makes you special, right? I did exactly that. For years. And I watched my inspiration slowly suffocate. Then one message changed everything. A struggling young designer, asking for help. Every instinct told me to ignore it. But something made me respond. And what happened next completely shattered my understanding of how creative success actually works. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you why the most successful creatives aren't the ones protecting their flame. They're the ones setting others on fire. And how this one counterintuitive principle didn't just save my career, it multiplied it beyond anything I achieved alone. But first, let me show you just how dim my light had become. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 years ago, on paper, I had everything I'd worked for, a waiting list of dream clients, a style so recognizable that people could spot my work without seeing my signature. I'd been featured in design blogs, won awards, charge rates I once thought were impossible. I should have been ecstatic. Instead, I was hollow, empty, like I'd climbed this mountain only to discover there was nothing at the top but thin air and loneliness. Every morning, I'd open my laptop with this quiet dread, not because I had too much work, but because creating felt like pulling teeth. The ideas that used to flow, they trickled, then they stopped entirely. And here's what I'm ashamed to admit. I started to resent other designers, especially the ones coming up. I'd see someone post a technique similar to mine, and I'd feel this flash of anger. They're stealing my style. They're copying my voice. I'd scroll through their success with this sick feeling in my stomach. Every new designer who gained traction felt like a threat, like they were siphoning light from my candle. I was successful, and I was miserable, and I had no idea that those two things were connected. Because here's what nobody tells you about reaching your goals. Achievement without connection is just expensive loneliness. I had the career. I'd lost the joy. And the thing that made it all worse? I thought this was just what success looked like. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. sometimes, heart pounding, convinced that my creative well had run dry forever, that I'd used up all my good ideas, that from here on out, it was just maintenance, protecting what I'd built, defending my territory. The light was dimming, and I didn't know how to make it bright again. What I didn't realize was that I was standing in my own shadow. So I did what seemed logical. If my light was dimming, I needed to protect it more carefully. I updated my NDAs to be ironclad. Every client conversation, every strategy session, locked down. I stopped sharing process videos. I declined podcast interviews. When design communities invited me to speak, I politely refused. My reasoning was simple. If I give away my secrets, what do I have left? I started hoarding knowledge like a dragon hoards gold. I had folders upon folders of tutorials I'd never share. Techniques I developed through painful trial and error, all filed away, password protected. For my eyes only. There's an old proverb that says, "He who builds a wall around his light soon sits in the shadow of his own making." I didn't know it then, but I was living that proverb in real time. When younger designers reached out asking for advice, I'd craft polite deflections. "So sorry, I'm absolutely swamped right now. Maybe in a few months." Knowing full well I'd never follow up, I convinced myself I was being smart, strategic, professional. I'm not a charity, I'd tell myself. I worked hard for this knowledge. Why should I just hand it out for free? And you want to know the insane part? My income was stable. My reputation was intact. By every external metric. This strategy was working, but internally, The darkness got closer. The walls I'd built to protect my light were blocking out the sun. Every piece I created felt derivative of my own previous work. I was copying myself, trapped in a loop because I had no fresh input, no new perspectives, no creative friction. I'd become a prisoner in a fortress of my own making. And the irony, the cruel, perfect irony, was that in trying to preserve my creative light, I was suffocating it. The isolation I thought was protection was actually starvation. I remember one specific night. It was late October, rain against the windows. I finished a project I'd been working on for weeks. It was technically perfect. The client would love it. But when I looked at it, I felt nothing. No pride, no satisfaction. Just this quiet terror that I'd never feel that creative spark again. That maybe this was it. Maybe I'd peaked. And from here, it was just a slow, professional decline into irrelevance. I was wrong about so many things. But I was especially wrong about what happens when you try to protect a flame by cutting off its oxygen. You don't preserve it. You kill it. Then, on a Tuesday morning in November, my entire worldview cracked open. I was going through my usual inbox triage, client revisions, vendor invoices, promotional garbage, when I saw it, an email with a subject line. You probably won't read this, but I have to try. Something about that subject line stopped me. Maybe it was a vulnerability. Maybe it was the resignation. I almost deleted it. My cursor literally hovered over the trash icon. But I opened it instead. It read, "Hi, Aria. My name is Leo. I'm 23, and I've been trying to break into design for the past year. Your portfolio was the first thing that made me think, I want to do that. Your color work, your typography, it gave me permission to be bold. I've been stuck on the same project for 3 weeks. I've watched every free tutorial I can find. I've redesigned it 7 times. I know you're incredibly busy and probably get 100 messages like this, but I'm desperate and I have no one else to ask. I'm not asking for free work, just direction. 5 minutes of your insight would change everything for me. I'm in the dark here, and you're the only light I can see. If you can't, I understand. Thank you for existing in this space. You've already taught me more than you know." I read it 3 times. My first reaction, my trained, conditioned, wall-protected reaction, was familiar. Delete it. You don't have time. He'll figure out like you did. This is not your problem. But then something else surfaced. A memory. 10 years ago, I was Leo. I was the one sending desperate emails to designers I admired, hoping just one person would throw me a rope. Out of maybe 30 messages I sent, exactly 2 people responded. And those 2 responses, totaling maybe 8 minutes of their time, literally altered the trajectory of my career. One of them told me about a design principle I'd never heard of. The other connected me to a freelance opportunity that became my first major client. 8 minutes. 2 strangers. Everything changed. I looked at Leo's message again. At that line, "I'm in the dark here, and you're the only light I can see." And I realized I had a choice. I could honor the version of me that had built these walls, that said my time was too valuable, my knowledge too hard-won, my light too precious to share. Or I could honor the version of me that once desperately needed someone to care. There's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But it's also true that when the teacher is ready, the student appears. Maybe Leo wasn't just asking for help. Maybe he was offering me a way out of the darkness I'd built around myself. My rational brain was screaming at me. This is how it starts. You help one person, and suddenly you're drowning in requests. You'll become the free help desk for every aspiring designer on the internet. Guard your time. Guard your light. But my heart, the part of me that remembered what it felt like to be unseen, unheard, stuck, that part whispered something different. I clicked reply, and I started typing. "Hi, Leo. I remember being exactly where you are. Send me the project. Let's see what we're working with." For sentences. Maybe 90 seconds to write. I had no idea I just lit the match that would burn down everything I thought I knew about success, scarcity, and what it means to shine. What happened next didn't just change Leo's trajectory. It changed mine. Here's what I expected. I'd spend maybe 20 minutes looking at Leo's work, give him some basic feedback, feel good about myself, and move on with my life. That's not what happened. Leo sent me his project, a brand identity for a local coffee shop, and immediately I saw his problem. He was making the exact same mistake I'd made 5 years earlier. Try and do too much, communicate too many ideas in a single logo. So I recorded a quick video walkthrough. 10 minutes. Showed him where the design was fighting itself. Explained the principle of visual hierarchy. One primary message. Everything else supports it. I sent it. Felt good. Checked that off my conscience. But then something unexpected happened. Leo responded with his revision, and it was better. Not perfect, but significantly stronger. He'd actually understood the principle and applied it. And in his email, he asked me a follow-up question that made me stop cold. You mentioned visual hierarchy. Does that same principle apply to website layouts? Because I've been struggling with this portfolio site. And that question, that simple, curious follow-up, forced me to articulate something I've been doing intuitively for years but had never put into words. I spent 30 minutes writing out the connection between logo design and web design, about how hierarchy is really just guiding the viewer's eye in order of importance. And as I was typing, I realized I'm learning this deeper right now. By teaching it, I'm understanding it better. That was the first crack in my worldview. The second came 3 days later. I was working on a client's website redesign, stuck on the navigation structure. And I suddenly remembered the question Leo had asked about translating hierarchy across mediums. And because I just spent those 30 minutes articulating the principle, the solution appeared immediately. Teaching Leo had sharpened my own tool. This is when I started to understand what I now call the law of the candle. It's not a metaphor. It's physics. Creative energy doesn't follow the rules of physical matter. It follows different laws. When you light another person's candle with yours, your flame doesn't diminish. Both candles burn just as bright. But now there's twice as much light in the room. But here's where it gets wild, and where this goes beyond the metaphor. In the real world, when you teach someone what you know, 3 things happen that actually make your light brighter. First, teaching forces clarity. You can't explain something you only half understand, so the act of teaching consolidates your own knowledge. You learn it deeper. Second, questions expose your blind spots. When someone asks you why or how, they often reveal gaps in your own understanding that you've been glossing over. Their curiosity sharpens your expertise. Third, community creates abundance. When you help someone level up, they don't steal your clients. They attract different clients and send you referrals. They create opportunities that wouldn't exist if they stayed stuck. This isn't charity. This isn't paying it forward. Feel-good nonsense. This is strategic. This is how the best in any field actually stay at the top, not by hoarding, but by generating. There's an ancient African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I've been trying to go fast, running alone, protecting my lead, and I was about to burn out completely. What I didn't realize was that the path to sustainable success, the kind that doesn't leave you hollow, requires other people's candles burning alongside yours. The room doesn't get darker when you light more candles. The room gets brighter for everyone, including you. But understanding a principle and actually living it, those are 2 very different things. I was about to learn that the hard way. Okay, so I'd had this revelation. The law of the candle. Beautiful concept. Inspiring metaphor. But I was still terrified. Because there's a massive gap between understanding something intellectually and actually doing it. Especially when doing it means dismantling every protective instinct you built over years. So I started small. Almost embarrassingly small. Here's what I did. And here's what you can do if you're standing where I was, successful but isolated, knowing you need to share but terrified of what it might cost. Step 1. Share one thing openly. Just one. For me, it was that principle I'd explained to Leo about visual hierarchy. I turned it into a simple Instagram carousel. 5 slides. The one design principle that changed everything for me. I was nervous posting it. Genuinely nervous. Because this was something I'd been doing for years but never teaching. It felt like giving away a competitive advantage. I posted at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, then immediately put my phone face down because I couldn't watch. The next morning, it had 3,000 likes and 200 saves. Designers I respected were commenting, "This is so helpful and wish I'd learned this years ago." And here's the thing that shocked me. Not one person said, "Oh, now that I know this, I don't need Ari anymore." Instead, 12 new potential clients direct messaged me because sharing that principle didn't commoditize my expertise. It demonstrated it. Sharing expertise doesn't diminish value. It proves it. Step 2, answer one public question. Someone in a design forum asked, "How do you know when a logo is done?" Omi would have scrolled past. Numi took 15 minutes to write a thoughtful response about my personal quality checklist. The 5 questions I asked before declaring a logo finished. That response got bookmarked by hundreds of designers. And 3 months later, one of those designers recommended me for a $15,000 branding project, specifically saying, "I've learned from your free advice for months. I want to hire the person behind that wisdom." There's an old saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Your journey to abundance, creative, professional, personal, begins with a single spark. Not a bonfire, not a brand overhaul, not suddenly becoming a full-time mentor. Just one small, nervous act of generosity. Step 3, make one small resource free. I had this Photoshop action I'd built for creating a specific texture effect. It took me weeks to perfect. I'd been planning to sell it as part of a premium toolkit. Instead, I posted it for free download with a simple caption. This took me way too long to figure out, hoping it saves you some time. Downloaded 4,000 times in the first week. And you know what happened? My paid product sold more, not less. Because people who benefited from the free resource wanted to support me. They trusted me more. Generosity isn't a loss leader. It's a trust builder. But let me be honest about what this actually felt like in the moment. When I first replied to Leo, my hands were shaking slightly. It sounds dramatic, but it's true. Because I was violating years of conditioning. Years of protect your secrets, guard your time, don't work for free. I sent that first response to Leo and then immediately second-guessed myself. What if he becomes a competitor? What if I'm creating my own replacement? What if he takes everything I teach him and uses it to undercut my prices? None of those fears came true. Not one, but dozens of unexpected opportunities did. Speaking invitations, collaboration offers, new clients who said they hired me specifically because they saw me helping others. The first spark is scary because you can't see the whole fire yet. You're lighting it in the dark, on faith. But here's what I learned. You don't need to commit to lighting 100 candles. You just need to light one and see what happens. So if you're sitting there right now, successful but isolated, knowing you should share but terrified to start, pick one thing. One insight you've learned the hard way. One question you can answer publicly. One resource you can offer freely. Not everything. Not a masterclass. Not your entire business model. Just one spark. Because the journey from scarcity to abundance doesn't begin with a grand gesture. It begins with a trembling hand, lighting a single match in the dark. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think lighting the candle is the whole job. They share one thing, answer one question, feel good about themselves, and then nothing. The flame flickers and dies because there's no oxygen, no fuel, no sustained attention. That's not mentorship. That's a gesture. Real transformation, for them and for you, comes from tending the flame. And this is where the work happens. This is also where the magic happens. Let me show you what this looked like with Leo. After that initial feedback on his coffee shop logo, Leo revised it. It was better, but still had issues. I could have just said, "Looks good," and moved on. Instead, I did something that felt uncomfortable. I invested more time. I scheduled a 30-minute video call with him. Now, every part of my old scarcity brain was screaming, 30 minutes? That's billable time. You're giving away money. Where does this end? But I did it anyway. And in that call, something incredible happened. I asked Leo to walk me through his revision process. Show me what you changed and why. And as he explained his thinking, I spotted something I'd been doing wrong in my own work for months. He said, I realized I was trying to make the logo work for the business card, the signage, and the website simultaneously. So it ended up working for none of them. You taught me hierarchy, so I designed for the primary use case first, the storefront sign, and adapted from there. Primary use case first. Adapt from there. I had been doing the opposite on a major client project. Try and make a brand identity work everywhere at once, and it was becoming a mushy compromise. Leo's question, his process of working through my advice, revealed my own blind spot. This is the part nobody tells you. Mentorship isn't one-way transfer. It's a dialogue, and in that dialogue, you rediscover principles you'd internalized so deeply you stop seeing them. Tending the flame means active engagement. Here's what that actually looked like over the next few months. I reviewed 3 more iterations of Leo's work. Not just looks good, feedback. Real critique. This works because X. This doesn't work because Y. Here's why I try instead. Each review took 15 to 20 minutes. Each one made me sharper because I had to articulate why something worked, not just recognize that it did. I connected Leo to resources I discovered. A color theory course that changed my approach. A typography foundry with a student discount. A freelance contract template that protected both parties. These weren't things I created, just things I'd stumbled upon through years of trial and error. Sharing them cost me nothing but 5 minutes. I made one critical introduction. Leo mentioned he needed product photography for his portfolio, but couldn't afford it. I knew a photographer who was building her own book and needed design work for her website. One email introduction. They traded services. Both portfolios got stronger. I facilitated value creation without spending $1. And here's the crucial part. I didn't do this out of pure altruism. I did it because every single interaction made me better. After 3 months of actively mentoring Leo, my own client work improved measurably. Why? Because teaching is the highest form of learning. When you have to explain why a design principle works, you understand it at a deeper level. When you critique someone else's work, you develop a sharper eye for your own. When you help someone solve a problem, you build pattern recognition that accelerates your own problem solving. Leo got better at design, but I got better at thinking about design. Now, let me address the thing you're probably wondering. How much time did this actually take? Wasn't this exhausting? Here's the honest accounting. Initial feedback video. 10 minutes follow-up call. 30 minutes 3 design reviews. Approximately 50 minutes total resource sharing emails. Approximately 15 minutes total 1 introduction email. 3 minutes. Total investment over 3 months. Approximately 108 minutes. Less than 2 hours. Spread across 90 days. For less than 2 hours of engaged attention, I didn't just help someone find their path. I sharpened my own skills, deepened my own understanding, and as you'll see, create opportunities one never could have manufactured alone. Tending the flame isn't about becoming someone's full-time, unpaid mentor. It's about sustained, strategic engagement, not constant availability, thoughtful investment. You don't need to respond to every message immediately. You don't need to solve every problem. You don't need to be endlessly accessible. You need to genuinely engage when you do engage. One detailed critique is worth more than 10 looks great comments. One thoughtful introduction is worth more than 100 superficial networking messages. One real conversation is worth more than a year of polite email exchanges. Tend the flame. Don't just light it and walk away. Because here's what I was about to discover. When you tend someone else's flame with genuine care, you don't just help them grow. You create conditions for your own transformation. And sometimes that transformation comes from the place you fear most. 6 months into mentoring Leo, my worst fear came true. He got good, really good. His portfolio had transformed. The work was confident, distinctive, professional. His client list was growing. His Instagram following had tripled. He was getting opportunities. And my scarcity brain had a complete meltdown. This is it. I thought. I created my own competition. I handed him everything I learned the hard way, and now he's going to take clients from me. I'm going to regret this. It's one thing to help someone when they're struggling and no threat to you. It's another thing entirely when they start succeeding. Because here's the fear that stops most people from generously sharing. What if they outshine me? What if they take what I taught them and become better than me? What if the clients I could have had go to them instead? What if I'm training my own replacement? This is the scarcity mindset in its purest form. The belief that success is a fixed pie, and someone else's slice makes mine smaller. So let me tell you exactly what happened when Leo got good, and let me destroy this fear completely. First, Leo developed his own style. Yes, he learned principles from me. Visual hierarchy, color theory, typography fundamentals. But his application was completely different. His aesthetic leaned minimalist and geometric. Mine is layered and organic. His client base was tech startups. Mine was lifestyle brands and nonprofits. We weren't competing. We were adjacent. He didn't become Aria 2.0. He became Leo 1.0. With a foundation I helped him build. Second, he credited me publicly. In his Instagram bio, Design Mentorship by Aria Creative. In his portfolios about Page. I'm forever grateful to Aria, who saw potential in me when I was completely lost. In a design community podcast, Aria taught me how to think about design, not just execute it. Every single mention sent people to my work. Potential clients, collaboration opportunities, speaking invitations. He wasn't stealing my light. He was amplifying it. Third, he sent me clients I couldn't have gotten on my own. 2 months after his portfolio transformation, I got an email from a potential client. Leo recommended you for a project that's outside his capacity. It's a full brand identity and website for a company launching nationwide. Budget is $40,000. Interested? Leo had been offered the project first. It was too big for his current skill level, and he knew it. So instead of struggling through it or declining silently, he recommended me. He sent me a $40,000 project. The person I trained to compete with me just became my most valuable referral source. But here's what really shattered my scarcity mindset. I ran into Leo at a design community meetup. We caught up, and then he introduced me to 3 other designers, all people he'd been mentoring using the same principles I'd taught him. He'd become a candle lighter himself. And those 3 designers? They were serving completely different markets. One was doing motion graphics for nonprofits. One was specializing in packaging design for sustainable products. One was doing UI/UX for healthcare apps. None of them were threats to me. All of them expanded the ecosystem I was part of. This is the part that breaks people's brains. When you help someone succeed, you don't create a competitor. You create an ally. Competitors fight for the same resources. Allies create new resources together. One of those designers, Leo, introduced me to become a collaboration partner. She handled animation. I handled brand identity. Together, we could offer services neither of us could alone. We started winning projects we would have never been considered for individually. Another designer sent me overflow work when she was booked. I did the same for her. The room got brighter for everyone. Here's the truth about what happens when you help someone outshine you. They don't outshine you. They shine next to you. And the combined light lets everyone see further. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's not just a motivational platitude. It's economic reality. When Leo succeeded, he didn't steal my clients. He expanded the market's awareness of quality design. He raised the standards. He created new opportunities that rippled outward. I'm not going to lie. It took time for my nervous system to catch up with this reality. The first time I saw Leo speaking at a design conference, teaching principles I'd taught him, part of me felt that old scarcity panic. He's becoming known. What if people start going to him instead of me? But then someone in the audience came up to me afterward and said, Leo mentioned you taught him this framework. I've been following your work ever since. Can we talk about a potential project? His success was creating my opportunities. This is a physics-defying truth. In a world of candles, there is no competition, only more light. When Leo got good, he didn't diminish my flame. He made the whole space brighter. And in that brighter space, I could see opportunities I've been missing in the dark. Your worst-case scenario, that someone you help become successful, is actually your best case scenario. Because successful people remember who helped them. Because successful people refer opportunities. Because successful people become collaborators, not competitors. The scarcity mindset says, protect what you have. The abundance mindset says, create more together. I spent years protecting my light in isolation. It almost burned me out completely. Then I started lighting other candles. And I've never been brighter. Fast forward 1 year from that first nervous reply to Leo's email. I'm at the annual Creative Summit, a design conference I'd attended alone for the past 5 years. Usually I'd show up, network politely with strangers, attend some talks, and leave feeling professionally competent but personally disconnected. This year was different. I walked into the main hall during the networking session. The usual scene, clusters of people talking, business cards exchanging hands, that low hum of professional small talk. And then I saw them. Leo was there, in the center of a group of about 7 or 8 people. He was animated, gesturing, clearly explaining something with enthusiasm. I started walking over, and as I got closer, I recognized 3 of the people in that circle. They were the designers Leo had introduced me to at that meetup months ago, the ones he'd been mentoring. But there were 4 other people I didn't recognize, younger designers, all listening intently. I stood at the edge of the circle for a moment, just observing, and I realized what I was looking at. Leo was doing exactly what I'd done for him, explaining principles, answering questions, offering encouragement, lighting candles. And those 3 designers I didn't know, they were contributing too, sharing their own experiences, offering different perspectives, expanding on Leo's points. This wasn't a lecture. It was a conversation, a living, breathing community of people helping each other get better. Then Leo saw me. Arya, oh my God, perfect timing. I was just explaining that visual hierarchy principle you taught me. Can you help me articulate the part about negative space? He pulled me into the circle, not as a celebrity expert on a pedestal, but as a peer, a contributor to the collective knowledge. And for the next 45 minutes, we had one of the most creatively energizing conversations I'd had in years. Someone asked about color psychology. Another person shared a resource about accessible design. Someone else talked about a client management strategy that had transformed their freelance business. Ideas were flowing. Connections were forming. Problems were being solved in real time. This was the opposite of the isolated, competitive, guard-your-secret environment I'd been living in. This was abundance. Over the course of that 3-day conference, I was introduced to 6 potential clients by people in that circle and the extended network. 3 of those turned into contracts totaling $85,000 in revenue. I formed 2 new collaboration partnerships. One with a copywriter who'd been looking for a designer with my style. One with a developer who specialized in sustainable web platforms, a market I wanted to break into but had no entry point. I got invited to speak at 2 other conferences because someone in the circle had organizing connections and thought my approach to mentorship was valuable. Most importantly, I felt creatively alive for the first time in years. New perspectives, fresh ideas, different approaches to problems I'd been stuck on. The creative well that had run dry, it was overflowing. On the last night of the conference, that same group of us went to dinner together. 10 designers, ranging from Leo, who'd been designing for less than 2 years, to someone who'd been in the industry for 20. And at one point, someone raised a glass and said, "To the people who light candles instead of cursing the darkness." Everyone looked at me. Leo said, "Arya taught me that a candle never loses its light while lighting another candle. And everyone at this table is proof." I had to excuse myself to the bathroom because I was legitimately about to cry. 1 year earlier, I'd been sitting alone in my apartment at 2 a.m, convinced my creative light was dying, desperately trying to protect the last flickers. Now I was sitting at a table with 10 people whose lights were burning bright, and mine was brighter than it had ever been. Not because I'd hoarded my knowledge, because I'd given it away, not because I protected my flame, because I'd used it to light others. My original light hadn't diminished. It had multiplied. I wasn't a solitary candle anymore. I was part of the chandelier. And the room, The creative ecosystem I was part of was so bright that we could all see possibilities that had been invisible in the darkness of isolation. This is what abundance looks like. Not more resources for you at the expense of others. More resources for everyone because you created them together. The journey from that first fearful email reply to this moment of collective brilliance took exactly 1 year and less than 20 hours of actual mentorship time. 20 hours to transform isolation into community. 20 hours to turn scarcity into abundance. 20 hours to prove that the ancient wisdom was right. A candle never loses its light while lighting another candle. In fact, it turns out it becomes part of something far brighter than it could ever be alone. So here we are. I'm sitting in the same studio where the story began. Same desk, same monitor, same city view out the window. But everything is different. The light hasn't changed. I have. If you told me 2 years ago that the solution to my creative burnout was to give away what I'd spent years learning, I would have thought you were insane. If you told me that helping a struggling designer I'd never met would lead to the most professionally successful and personally fulfilling year of my career, I wouldn't have believed you. If you told me that the path to abundance was through generosity, I would have rolled my eyes. I would have been completely wrong. Because here's what I finally understand. You are not a solitary candle guarding your flame. You were never meant to be. You are a keeper of fire, designed to ignite others. Your knowledge isn't valuable because you hoard it. It's valuable because you've refined it through use, and it becomes more valuable when you test it by teaching it. Your success isn't threatened when others succeed. It's amplified because successful people remember who helped them, refer opportunities, and create collaborative possibilities. Your light doesn't diminish when you share it. It multiplies through connection and compounds through community. This isn't idealism. This is physics. The physics of creative energy. The physics of human connection. The physics of sustainable success. And I need you to understand, this isn't just about being a good person. This isn't just paying it forward, karma. This is strategic. Teaching solidifies your own knowledge. Every time you explain something, you understand it deeper. Every question someone asks exposes a blind spot in your own thinking. Mentorship builds your network organically, not through forced networking events or transactional LinkedIn messages. Through genuine relationships based on mutual value. Generosity creates unexpected opportunities. The best projects I've ever gotten came through referrals from people I'd helped. The best collaborations came from communities I contributed to. Your legacy won't be measured by the light you kept. It will be measured by the fires you started. So here's what I want you to do this week. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. This week, look into the darkness. Who's struggling with something you've already figured out? Who's asking questions you can answer? Who's stuck where you used to be stuck? Give one spark. Share one lesson you learned the hard way. Make one introduction between two people who should know each other. Answer one question publicly that you'd normally answer privately. Offer one resource freely that you'd normally gatekeep. One spark. That's it. You don't need to become a full-time mentor. You don't need to overhaul your entire business model. You don't need to give away everything you know. Just light one candle, and then watch what happens. Maybe that person transforms their work and tags you as their inspiration. Maybe they send you a client referral 6 months later. Maybe they introduce you to someone who becomes a long-term collaborator. Maybe teaching them clarifies something in your own work. Or maybe they become a candle lighter themselves, and they light someone else, and that person lights someone else. And suddenly, you're not just responsible for one light. You're responsible for a constellation. That's how abundance works. Not through accumulation, through multiplication. Not through protection, through propagation. Not through keeping, through giving. The candle you light today might illuminate someone's entire path tomorrow. And your light, it will never, ever diminish. Because a candle never loses its light while lighting another candle. In fact, it turns out it becomes part of something far greater than it ever could have been alone. So go, look into the darkness, and light a candle.